Good evening. Hello. Hey. Welcome to the Grolier reading series. Tonight we're dealing with some translation. Before we get to the very brief introduction, I know Chloe needs to run home, so I promised to be brief, and I will do that. Dan wants to go home as well. Dan can't hear me?
I can't hear you well.
Oh, but I'm being recorded well. So everyone who's watching this streaming can hear me, but Dan cannot. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Dan, would you go home and report back? Before we start, Katie, do you have a surname, Katie?
Oh, my last name is Macaulay.
It's Katie Macaulay's one of the booksellers here at the Grolier. It's her birthday. She's turning 21 today. So before we get to this, please, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Katie. Happy birthday to you. Thank you for spending part of your evening with us. I believe everyone got a broadside. These were printed by Michael Babcock at Terabang Letterpress in collaboration with Roland Pease, who's hiding in the back, through Zoland Editions. Thank you very much. 2-color letterpress image from the cover of Coco's book Bamboo Phobia. Thank you, Ian Holiday, for giving permission for that as well. All right, to the readers. Our first author this evening, Chloe Garcia Roberts, will be reading selections from Historia Verdadera by Bernal Diaz del Castillo, an account of the Spaniards landing in Veracruz, their entry into the capital at the heart of the Aztec Empire, and the demise of that empire. Chloe will provide further details on the project before delving into the work. She is the author of The Reveal from Noemi Press and currently serves as the deputy editor of the Harvard Review. Chloe is also the recipient of a Heim Translation Fund Grant and a 2021 National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship in Translation. Coco Thett, born in Burma, continues to wrestle with precisely what Burmese-ness entails, a theme he explores in the poetry collection The Burden of Being Burmese from Zephyr Press. Writing in both English and Burmese, Coco is perpetually translating between forms of subjectivity, Buddhist concepts, and a fierce socio-political eye casting light on humanity's struggle within the inherent complexities of the contemporary world. While studying at the Yangon Institute of Technology, Coco Thett was arrested and detained for his involvement in the December 1996 student uprising. After his release in April of the following year, he left Burma to cycle between Singapore, Iowa City, Vienna, Helsinki, and various spots in the UK, returning to Sagaing in central Myanmar from 2017 for a couple of years, departing before the 2021 coup. His most recent work in translation includes his second collection of poetry, Bamboo Phobia, also from Zephyr, and the anthology Picking Off New Shoots Will Not Stop the Spring, witness poems and essays from Myanmar, 1988 to 2021 by Ethos Books. He has been recognized with an English Pen Award. The work of both readers tonight relies on the translatability of lived experience between languages and cultural constructs. They are invested in the complete range of the literary experience as writers, editors, translators, and perhaps most importantly, as critical readers of the connective tissue linking all of their languages. So let's begin. Please welcome Chloe Garcia Roberts.
Can I put the water? Thank you. This is such an honor. I'm so excited. This is my first time reading at the Grolier. So I'm going to read some work that's somewhere in between poetry and translation. I'll explain a little bit and then I'll read a few pieces from it. So as Chris said, I'm going to be reading from the Historia Verdadera de la Conquista de la Nueva España. The True History of the Conquest of New Spain is written by Bernal Diaz del Castillo, who served as a soldier under Hernan Cortez, and it chronicles the army's journey to the city on a lake at the heart of the Aztec Empire. Dubbed the first great American novel, it is part of the bedrock of Mexican consciousness, a supertext along the lines of the Bible or the Odyssey. The Historia Verdadera was first published in 1632 in a version that was heavily edited to favor Spanish interests, and the true history was only published in 1904 after being thought lost. It was rediscovered in Guatemala, where Diaz had lived out the rest of his life. We had a copy of the Historia Verdadera in my house when I was growing up, and I remember taking it down a few times, reading it fitfully, never consecutively or completely, but always circling that glimpse of a city that underlaid the city that I knew. A few years ago, I happened to hear a story at a family wedding of how my great-grandfather, Genaro Garcia, a historian, bibliophile, and director of what is now known as the Museo Nacional de Antropología, traveled to Guatemala, obtained a copy of this manuscript, and republished it. This edition is known as the Guatemala manuscript and has become the standard, and it outlines all the multitudinous ways that the earlier version had been cut, edited, and changed. At first, I returned to this text simply out of curiosity to see what I could determine about my great-grandfather's personal connection to it. But then, drawn back to that first description of Mexico City, I found myself working alongside him, comparing editions, picking sentences apart, considering the meaning behind each word. Translation is the best mode of understanding for me, and I began to translate certain fragments of the text so as to better see them. Almost immediately, I regretted the narrowing that had to occur for these words to arrive in English, so I invited my poet self to join the work. And I'll begin with a piece of text that is stated by the author right when they first see the city that is built out in the middle of the lake, and they're about to cross over the causeway to enter the city. The entrance. Don't marvel that I describe it this way here, because there's so much to think about. I don't know how to put it into words, how to make you see the things we saw, the never heard, the never seen, the never dreamed. Don't be surprised that I'm writing like this, because I don't know how to tell you about it. There is too much to think over, all the things we saw, things that before that instant we'd never heard, never glimpsed, never even imagined. The thing is not to marvel at what I write or the way I write, because I have so much in my head and have no plan for how I will convey what was seen that had never been seen, nor listened to, nor even realized until that moment. Don't be amazed at the way I am writing, because you need to think carefully about what I don't know how to tell you. You need to see what was never perceived, never witnessed, never even substantiated, the way we saw. Don't be surprised by the way I am writing. I have to think so carefully about it. I don't know how I will construe it, a way to see things never listened for, or looked for, or even conceived of, the way we did. Don't wonder at the way I am describing this, because you need to focus on what I don't know, how I will translate the things we witnessed, unheard of, unseen, and even undreamed. Cuauhtemoc was the very last Aztec emperor, and he ruled for a year, and when he fell, that was the end. Cuauhtemoc captured. It rained and flashed and thundered that afternoon until the middle of the night, with so much more water than ever before. And once it was known Cuauhtemoc had been overcome, we soldiers were left as deaf as if we had been men standing within a bell tower where many bells were ringing in that very instant when what had been ringing ceased to ring, when what had been singing ceased to sing. And I say this specifically because for the entirety of the 93 days we were in that city, night and day, the Mexican captains were yelling and shouting, warning the squadrons and warriors who were set to battle on the arteries, others calling to those in canoes who were to fight with the brigantines and with those of us on the bridges, others hammering, sinking and sharpened palisades and opening and deepening the waterways and bridges and making stone fortifications, others preparing lances and arrows, and the women rounding stones to hurl with slings. And so, from the adoratories and towers to their idols, those goddamn drums and horns, those painful tall drums never ceased to sound. And so by night and by day, we were held in that great sound. So we didn't hear one another, so that one could not hear the others. And after we made Cuauhtemoc a prisoner, the screams ceased and all the noise. This is why I said before, it was as if we had been within a bell tower. This is why I said before, what had been ringing ceased to ring, what had been singing ceased to sing. The rule of Cortés. And so while Cortés was in Coyoacan and staying in these palaces with whitewashed walls that could be written upon with charcoal or some sort of ink, he would wake every morning to read the writing on the wall. There were many slurs, some in prose and some in verse, some malicious in the way of farce. There was writing that said that the sun and the moon and the sky and the stars and the sea and the land have their paths. And if at any time they deviate from the inclination for which they were created, if they stray beyond its delineations, they will still return to their original state. They will still return to their original being. There was writing that said that this is the way it was with the ambition and command of Cortés, that it will come to pass, he will become again who he always was. There was writing that said it had to happen, this return, a return to his primary nature, a return to his first incarnation, a return to himself, who he first was. I'm gonna finish with a slightly longer piece. This is a chapter. It's called The Hawk. I am telling you this story because even when he was imprisoned, they trembled, because for him, they would pick a flying bird from out of the sky. He, Montezuma, knew when the ships were built and floated out on the water, launched with their riggings and masts, their royal banners and their imperial flags, and filled with men who proved their skill with oar and sail. And because he knew, he told Cortés he wished to go out and hunt on a certain isolated island of rock out in the lake, an island that no one dared to set foot upon, no matter how powerful they might be, upon pain of death. And Cortés told Montezuma he was welcome to go, but not to forget what he had told him when he went to visit his idols before, that his life was worth less than, that his life was not worth more than any trouble he might cause. But sure, He could go in those ships. The journey would certainly be better in them than in his own canoes or flat-bottomed boats, however big they might be. Montezuma was elated to fly away, to depart on the fastest of the vessels, accompanied by several of his lords and chiefs, and on the other ship went many caciques, local chiefs, and one of his sons, and he directed his huntsmen to follow in the canoes and shallow boats. But Cortes also sent Juan Velázquez de León, captain of the guards, Pedro de Alvarado, Cristobal de Olid, and Alonso de Avila, along with 200 soldiers. And all of these men, very much aware of the quarry they had been given, they watched Montezuma. And all of these captains I named were so riled, they saw red. Their blood was stirred, their feathers were ruffled. And when the soldiers were taken aboard, along with the 4 bronze cannon and all the powder we had, and our artillerymen who were called Mesa and Arvenga, they built together, on account of the season, an enclosure, inside of which perched Montezuma. Now a fresh wind began to blow, and the sailors amazed and delighted Montezuma to amuse themselves by working the sails so finely that they all flew. Montezuma grew light-hearted. He deemed it masterful, this harmony, and the canoes which held his huntsmen and the rest of his men fell behind, despite all the rowers they carried. And they arrived at the Peñol, that rock outcropping, which was not far, and he killed all his prey, the deer and the hares, and returned content to the city. And when we drew close to Mexico, Pedro de Alvarado and Juan Velázquez de León and all the other captains were ordered to fire the cannon, which thrilled Montezuma. And when we saw him so honest and fair, so direct and kind, we held him in our regard, a regard that the kings of those parts held. We were possessed to cede him the fealty that the kings of those parts possess, and he the same towards us. If I were to tell all the instances and all the ways he was revered, and the devotion and service that all the lords of New Spain and other provinces gave him, it would be never ending. I would never end. I would go on forever. I would still be talking. Because there was nothing Montezuma wished for that was not brought to him, even if it was a thing with wings, even if it was a thing that flew. A thing that flew. I say because another day, a group of us, 3 captains and some soldiers, were with the great Montezuma, when suddenly a hawk swooped down through those halls wide as passageways to catch a quail from among the many tame fowl who lived around the houses and palaces where Montezuma was kept, bred by a native mayordomo in charge of sweeping out the inner chambers. And our captains watched as the hawk dove and made its capture, and one of those men called Francisco de Saucedo the Elegant said, "That hawk, oh, so wonderfully he kills, how beautifully he flies." And the rest of us soldiers responded that the hawk was indeed wonderful, and that there were many such birds in these lands for falconing. Montezuma watched us as we twittered. He asked his page, Orteguilla, what we were saying, and his page responded with the words of the captains, how the hawk, who had just flown by on the hunt, was so fine that if we only had such a one, we would teach it to come to the hand, and out in open fields, whatever we set it upon, even if it were powerful, it would kill for us. So Montezuma said, "Then I will send for the hawk to be captured right now, and we will see if indeed you can break it." And all of us who were there removed our helmets at this benevolence. So he ordered his falconers to be summoned, and he told them to bring that hawk. And such skill they put into its capture that by the hour of reciting the Ave Maria, they returned with that very same hawk, and they gave it to Francisco de Saucedo, and he showed it the lure. A note. A lure is an apparatus used by falconers to recall and feed their hawks. It is a means by which the captured bird can regain a sense of agency, while all the while remaining a tool of the falconer. But because other things later occurred that are more important than this quest, I will cease to speak of this. Though I told you this story not only because he was such a great prince who drew tribute from all parts of New Spain and dominated many lands, but because in all places he was so completely obeyed that even when he was a prisoner, his vassals trembled at the sight of him, so much so that for him they seized even the birds flying through the air. But let us look away. Let us leave this behind. Let us put this aside. Let's note together how the wheel of bad fortune turns, also above us, in the air, like a bird. Let's say in unison, once again it approaches, it circles back around, it rolls towards us. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. Such a legendary place amongst legends. Ascent. My skin was born in the year of the pig. My ascent much later, and it would rather be a Capricorn. I seduce women with my ascent. I subdue them with my skin. You will hear my skin whinge, even after maggots dwell and die in my ascent. My skin is my landscape, my ascent, my fresh air. My skin is too thin for bad weather. My ascent so incredibly thick, it will whistle underwater. I am not one of those sentenced to solitary confinement for life inside their own skin. I can get under your skin once I step out of my ascent. People judge me by my skin. My skin's purpose in life is to prove them wrong. Once I open my mouth, my ascent proves them right. I keep my mouth shut, my skin open. Which is truer, my skin or my ascent? When it comes to swinishness, they are on the same page. In places where I am considered white, my yellow ascent always holds me back, since whatever comes from my mouth is an unpasteurized lie. I will always have a yellow ascent. As for my skin, it will be blues. When it fancies the blues, it will be jazz. When it fancies jazz. This one is called Copter for helicopter, and this is for my poet friend Han Lin, a brilliant Burmese poet who was jailed for some months for his part in a protest against the military regime after the 2021 military coup. But I wrote this poem way before that. Copter for Han Lin. Those who were born under the star of exile will experience a flight or two. For a taste of copter, you've got to be super lucky. Copter doesn't need takeoff speed. It doesn't need wheels and runway. Vertical ascension, that means vertical landing. On an airplane, you are subject to a stewardess's whim. There's no such thing as a copter stewardess. If there's a hostess on a copter, she is all yours. Copter passengers don't have to go through check-in or security. They don't have to carry passports or boarding papers. Copter people are light travelers. There's only one class on copter: business. You don't need to line up to board a copter. On a copter, you're not subject to lectures about the benefits of buckling up or keeping your back straight during the flight. If the airport is far, or when there's a traffic jam on the way to the airport, you'll be wasting your time traveling towards the airplane rather than spending your time enjoying the flight. With or without you, an airplane is set for a destination. An airplane is a public toilet on the wing. Copter is for the exceptionally talented. Just lay back and relax. There'll be an airlift on your roof. These are, you can laugh out. I mean, these are supposed to be humorous, right? Okay, but this is not supposed to be humorous. Bullets are dangerous. Actually, it's inspired by school shootings as much as by or the gun violence all around the world. Bullets are dangerous, not least of which because they contain lead. Lead is a heavy metal, a well-documented environmental poison. For contraception, Roman prostitutes ate supper, lead sugar. The hair fall, tooth fall, and downfall of Queen Elizabeth I is attributed to a lead cosmetic she layered on her face. A 17th century Burmese monarch loved to pour molten lead down the throats of captured pretenders to the throne, who would have done the same to him had they succeeded. Lead is 19th century polonium. Once in the body, lead disrupts the function of aminolevulinic acid dehydratase enzyme. Anything from headache and sleeplessness to hallucination, depression, fits, and coma. Lead in the blood will corrode your skin, blacken your teeth, and bleed your gums blue. The black puke it produces will burn your gullet. Bullets are dangerous, especially when they are fired into a body at high velocity. The difference between velocity and speed is velocity knows where it's going. It ensures instant death. So when you are hit by a bullet, just pray that you die instantly. Otherwise, it contains lead. It's a long, it's torture. Now I read in Burmese. I read this poem in Burmese first. It's about a river, the river Chindwin in Myanmar, which flows from the top of the northernmost part of the country, and it's a major tributary to the river Yavadi. And in this poem is is like similar sounding words, and Miye is river water, Miye is tear, right? In Burmese. So there's this play of words in the English translation as well. Chindwin, Miye Amye, Silo Aposhara Maho, a Pilon Omo Shantata, Lingom Pore Paika, Chutura Maho, Nina Chalu, Lejon Nega, Chuchu Itwigo, what Nepian and Tukta. Pem Long Bay, San Honedrigo, Yui Nisse, Mumit Tim Durigo, a Mouton Bia. Lambi Chiba needed Nangano Mingo. Meboga Keke Kebiara. Tuma and Battery, GB, Lugan Quadri Pieti. Jagging Chikima, Yadi Laya Mala. Mo Kawin call, Mo Kawin, Jiji Mabe. Tuma Job, the dog and Kabia Seari, Niji net, Nieji. Before I read this in English, in that particular region in Zagai, in the heartland of Burma, the people really cannot distinguish between two sounds, tears and river waters, Miyi and Myeyi. When they speak, it's like similar sounding, Miyi and Myeyi, river water and tears. Miyi is river water and Myeyi is tears. And I think it's really interesting, not only in my home country, but all over the places we are unable to, we already are unable to distinguish between river waters and tears. The Chindwin River Ridge, she rises above the flood stage like an overfilled pot. A tight pot that doesn't leak, hiccuping like a soon-to-be single mother. She will puke back into your face, or the plastic and rubber you forced into her throat. She belches, still draft. She is a river hanging on a river hangover. Rice hoarders will be whipped. Split beans hoarders will be spared. She will show what a dominatrix she is to those who mistake the rivulet moo for a river. Cross with the land, she will piss on the road's shoulder. Her refuse will fill disaster relief walls. For her monthly, does she have to know the day of the calendar month? If there's no bloody drought, there will be a bloody dodge. Local poets no longer make a distinction between Miyi, river water, and Miyi, tear. And now, how will you unfuck her? This poem I would like to dedicate to Mr. John Ashbery. On the eve of nuclear holocaust, all I could think of is sex, sex, sex. At the end of all my nerves, what does it feel to be human? The bathing beach is full of women, half naked. They all look young and stout. The able-bodied women would have been enlisted in war times. Their children will go to war too, replacing their soon-to-be dead parents. Mr. Ashbery turned 90 the other day. What must have he endured or enjoyed? Some houses are still lit, even in the blackout. Some people are aroused by peril. I look at myself in the mirror. In the half light, the reflection of my wrinkly dotage, fully erect and dripping wet. I will finish with a few poems that's not in this. And the first one is about this poor friend of mine who was captured in May 2021. He is a great poet, and the American poet. I translated him, and I sent the translations to some of my friends. And the American poet Christopher Mattison called him Mandelstam, right? The Russian poet of Myanmar. So he said he has this capacity, poetic capacity, but he was into resistance, and he was captured and tortured and killed. But just 12 hours, he was dead during the torture. That was on the 8th of May 2021, and the coup was in February, May 2021. And this poem I wrote after Lou Reed, the pop star Lou Reed, who wrote a song about John F. Kennedy, the day John Kennedy was assassinated. Yeah. Also, this poem is called The Day Kennedy Was Tortured to Death. After Lou Reed, I dreamed I was a poet laureate of Nebido, the abode of generals. The Generalissimo was a poet too. So was the Generalissimo's American Cocker Spaniel. To exorcise the woes in me, I took the wok pan I used to cook gazonyuet for supper. I smacked it too hard, it bled. Against a monsoon gust, we were in a national spitting contest. No matter how hard we spat, the gale always spat right back into our faces. Just like in Akhmatova's Russia, people learned to speak whisper. Even in whisper, they murmured. whom patrols will exterminate, whom bears in the chin hairs I overheard. We were Comely's men on a sinking shore. Each of us, in our own way, began to look out to the west, between 247° west and 245° west. I woke up to find Kathy between me and my other half in our bed. It wasn't Kathy. It was Kathy's disemboweled body. Kathy's death wasn't wasted. Life, even under tyranny, was meaningful, purposeful, and beautiful. It wasn't at all what we all imagined. Full of pain, peril, paranoia, saboteurs, and sycophants. I will read two new poems, very recent poems, and before the first one, especially for Gaza, because in a war-like situation, the others are always animals, and then in Burma as well, the military regime, the troops, the soldiers, they are called bitches or dogs or whatever, they are no longer, they are often dehumanized, right? Yeah, the others always dehumanized. And after the war in Gaza, the Israeli defense minister is supposed to have said that Palestinians people are, what's that called? Human animal, or yeah. Grammar of war. The word order is simple. Subject, verb, object. Variations exist. Subject, object, verb, or verb, subject, object. No conjugation. Verbs speak volumes in the simple present tense. Nouns are usually masculine. Pronouns are usually plural. They are usually animals. Adjectives are synonymous with good or bad. Declaratives or imperatives are commonplace. Interrogatives, not allowed. When war marches on your mind, it doesn't let language happen. Like grammar, war is organized crime. It's not manned by one person. One last piece. I just translated it in a carnivalistic manner this week because the Burmese version is much shorter. And my own Burmese version, I wrote this in Burmese, and I self-translated into English. So this is the first time, that I'm reading this. And this poem is called For My Own Peace of Mind. For my own peace of mind, I like to be able to live the Christmas truce at the Western Front at least twice a day, every sunrise and sunset. I like to be able to believe that all human beings are born free and equal. and that a blood-splattered path will lead us to a nation of peace, and that the pent-out stubs of Patao and Mu will bloom again. I would like to write about the possibility of a tribe who cross no borders, who fell no trees, who wave no flags. I would like to write about human nature that may be free of evil, of a peerless being who treats their foes with metta, that extraordinary loving kindness. I would like to be able to write about an extraordinary resilience without recurring nightmares.